The vast emptiness of space had never felt so crowded. As I stood on the observation deck of the Nebula Whisper, our diplomatic vessel gliding silently through the void, I couldn't help but marvel at the contradictions before me. The endless darkness of space, juxtaposed with the vibrant blue-green pearl that was Earth, hanging there in defiance of the emptiness. A world so full of life, yet so isolated from the greater galactic community, until now. My reflection stared back at me from the reinforced glass of the viewport, 4 amber eyes set in a face of scaled violet skin, arranged in what my species considered a dignified appearance. After 287 cycles of service to the Signari Diplomatic Corps, I, Ambassador Vexlor, had been chosen for what would undoubtedly be the defining mission of my career: first contact with the species known as humans. Ambassador, came a voice from behind me. We're approaching Earth's lunar orbit. The humans are hailing us. I turned to face my aide, Neelax, whose nervous energy manifested in the rapid vibration of her cranial frills. So soon? I expected them to wait until we were in position. That's not all, Ambassador, Neelax continued, her voice dropping to a whisper despite the privacy of the observation deck. The Edzandari representative is requesting your presence in the communication chamber. Immediately, a cold sensation trickled down my spine, making my scales tighten against my flesh. The Zandari weren't supposed to be part of this diplomatic mission. Their inclusion had been a last-minute declaration from the Galactic Council, one that I had strenuously objected to, given their reputation. The Edzandari were the oldest species in our known galaxy, having achieved spaceflight nearly 10,000 years before any other civilization. They were also the most ruthless, their empire built on the exploitation of resources from countless worlds. Their technology was unmatched, their military might unquestioned, and their diplomacy non-existent. Tell Emissary Krolax I will join him shortly, I said, adjusting my ceremonial sash. The weight of the metal emblem signifying my rank and achievements felt particularly heavy today. Vexlor, Neelax said, dropping formalities in her concern. What are the Jandari really doing here? This was supposed to be a peaceful first contact. I gazed back at the blue planet. The humans have something the Zandari want, I admitted. Something every spacefaring race has needed since the dawn of interstellar travel. Fossil fuels, Neelax whispered. Earth is rich with them, I nodded grimly. And the humans, from what our observation probes have gathered, seem to be abandoning their use in favor of alternative methods. But that's good, isn't it? More resources for potential trade. Or for taking, I corrected her. The Edzandari don't trade for what they can simply take. I moved toward the exit, my long robes sweeping the polished floor. Prepare the diplomatic contingent. We'll proceed as planned with the human greeting ceremony. And Neelax, I added, pausing at the doorway, keep our communication logs backed up to the secure server. If things go poorly, the Galactic Council will need to know the truth of what happened here. The walk to the communication chamber felt interminable. Crew members from various species nodded respectfully as I passed, each bearing the same concerned expression. Everyone aboard knew what the Zandari presence meant, even if none dared speak it aloud. The communication chamber doors slid open at my approach, revealing a space dominated by a large holographic projection of Earth's moon. Standing before it was Emissary Krolax of the Edzandari, his elongated form draped in armor rather than diplomatic attire, his crystalline skin refracting the blue light of the hologram and casting prismatic patterns across the walls. Ambassador Vexlor, Krolax said, without turning. His voice reminded me of grinding stone. How fortunate that the Signari sent their most experienced diplomat for this encounter. I took the implied insult about my age in stride. Emissary Krolax, I wasn't aware the Zandari hegemony had such interest in primitive species. Now he turned, his faceted eyes revealing nothing of his thoughts. Let us dispense with pretense, Ambassador. We both know why I am here. The humans sit upon a treasure trove of resources, yet they lack the technology to properly utilize them or defend them. They've survived this long, I pointed out, and our scans indicate significant technological advancement in the past century alone. Krolax made a dismissive gesture with one of his 4 upper limbs. They haven't even mastered faster than light travel. They're confined to their own solar system, wallowing in their own primitive technologies. The galaxy would be better served if their resources were in more capable hands. The Signari position, I said carefully, is that all intelligent species deserve the opportunity to develop without interference. A charming philosophy, Krolax replied. One might even believe you mean it, were it not for the Signari mining operations on 17 underdeveloped worlds. I felt my frills flatten against my skull in anger. Those are sanctioned operations with minimal impact on pre-spaceflight civilizations, not wholesale resource theft. Semantics. Krolax waved away my objection. In any case, this is merely a courtesy notification. The Ajandari fleet is already en route. I will be joining them after this diplomatic charade is concluded. My 4 hearts seemed to stop beating simultaneously. Fleet? You're planning an invasion? The Galactic Council would never. The Galactic Council, Krolax interrupted, will receive our formal declaration of resource acquisition rights after the fact, as is our right under Section 7 of the Resource Allocation Treaty. The infamous Section 7, a loophole the Zandari had insisted upon when the treaty was drafted 3 millennia ago. It allowed for emergency acquisition of critical resources when delays might threaten galactic stability. It had rarely been invoked, and never against a newly discovered species. This is wrong, I said, abandoning diplomacy. The humans deserve better than to have their first contact with galactic society be an invasion. Krolax regarded me with what might have been amusement. Your sentiment is noted, Ambassador. Now shall we answer the humans' hail? I'm quite looking forward to meeting these curious creatures. Before I could respond, the holographic display shifted, and a human face appeared before us. Greetings, visitors, the humans said in their own language, which our translation systems immediately converted. I am Director Chen of Lunar Base Apollo. On behalf of the United Earth Government, welcome to our solar system. United Earth Government. Our intelligence had indicated multiple competing nation-states. This was unexpected. Greetings, Director Chen, I responded, stepping forward. I am Ambassador Vexlor of the Signari, representing the Galactic Cooperative of Intelligent Species. With me is Emissary Krolax of the Zandari Hegemony. We are honored by your presence, Director Chen replied, his expression revealing nothing of what must surely be overwhelming shock at encountering alien life. We've prepared docking facilities at Apollo base for your diplomatic vessel. We request that you limit your initial delegation to 5 representatives, as per standard first contact protocols. Standard first contact protocols. The humans shouldn't have any such thing. They'd never encountered alien life before. That will be acceptable, Krolax stated before I could respond. We shall arrive within your solar hour. The transmission ended, and I turned to the Zandari emissary. They seem remarkably prepared for our arrival. Krolax's crystalline features shifted in what passed for a smile among his kind. Or remarkably adept at concealing their fear. It matters little. Soon enough, they will understand their place in the galactic order. As I prepared our diplomatic team for the descent to the lunar base, I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Something about this first contact felt wrong. Not just the Zandari's transparent plans for invasion, but the humans' composure. They had reacted to our arrival, not with the wonder or terror one might expect from a species encountering extraterrestrial life for the first time, but with the calm efficiency of a people who had been expecting us. Our shuttle detached from the Nebula Whisper with a gentle shudder, beginning its descent toward the gray surface of Earth's moon. Through the viewport, I could see the sprawling complex of Apollo base, far larger than our intelligence had suggested it should be. Massive domes connected by enclosed transport tubes spread across the lunar landscape, and what appeared to be defensive installations were visible at regular intervals along the perimeter. "Ambassador," Nylax whispered from beside me, "those look like weapons platforms, advanced ones." I nodded slightly. It seems our intelligence on human technological development may be outdated. Krolax, seated across from us, merely looked bored. Primitive projectile weapons, no doubt, nothing that would concern a proper military force. The shuttle settled onto a landing pad with practiced precision, and the external cameras showed a delegation of humans approaching in environmental suits. They waited as the airlock cycle completed, then entered the reception area adjacent to our docking port. "Remember," I instructed my team, "we represent not just the Signari, but all non-Exandari species in the galaxy. First impressions will be crucial." We disembarked, Krolax and his two guards taking the lead despite protocol dictating that I, as senior ambassador, should proceed first. I suppressed my annoyance. There would be time for proper diplomatic corrections later, assuming the Xandari invasion plans could somehow be thwarted. The reception area was a surprise, not the utilitarian space I had expected, but an elegant chamber with high ceilings and walls adorned with what appeared to be artistic representations of space exploration. The humans had removed their helmets, revealing a diversity of appearances that matched our studies of their species. Director Chen stepped forward, a human of average height with features that our xenobiologists had associated with the geographical region called Asia. His posture was straight, his expression composed. "Ambassador Vexlaw, Emissary Krolax, welcome to Luna," he said, using the humans' more formal name for their moon. "I trust your journey was comfortable." "Most satisfactory," I replied, performing the Signari gesture of greeting, a crossing of my secondary arms while my primary arms remained open in a gesture of peace. "We are honored by your welcome." "Indeed," Krolax added, making no reciprocal gesture of his own. "Your facilities are more advanced than anticipated." Director Chen's expression revealed nothing. "We've prepared suitable accommodations for your physiological needs, based on the data your advanced probe provided. If you'll follow me, the Earth's representatives are eager to meet with you." As we walked through the corridors of the lunar base, I observed the humans around us. They showed curiosity, certainly, but none of the overwhelming awe or fear that typically characterized a species' first encounter with alien life. Some even seemed to be going about their regular duties, merely glancing at our procession before returning to their tasks. "You seem remarkably prepared for extraterrestrial visitors, Director Chen," I commented as we entered a transport tube that would take us to the main conference facility. "We've had protocols in place for this eventuality for over a century," Chen replied casually. "Though I admit, your specific physiologies presented some last-minute adjustments for our accommodation systems." "A century?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "Yet you've made no attempts at interstellar communication." Chen's lips curved slightly. "We thought it prudent to listen before we spoke." The implications of that statement lingered uncomfortably in my mind as we arrived at the conference chamber. The room was arranged in a circular fashion, with a large round table at its center. Around it sat approximately 20 humans, each wearing formal attire with insignias that presumably denoted their nationality or position. "Assembled representatives of Earth," Director Chen announced. "I present Ambassador Vexlaw of the Signari and Emissary Krolax of the Xandari, representatives of the galactic community. A human female rose from her seat, her skin dark, her hair arranged in complex patterns, her attire suggesting a position of authority. I am Secretary General Adeyemi of the United Earth Government. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to our solar system. The formalities proceeded as expected: introductions, exchanges of pleasantries, careful diplomatic probing from both sides. I noted with interest the composition of the human delegation, representatives from regions called Russia, China, the United States, the European Union, India, Brazil, and several others. So they had maintained their national identities while forming some sort of unified government structure, an unusual developmental path for a species. Throughout the initial discussions, Krolax remained unusually silent, which concerned me more than if he had been openly hostile. The Zandari were not known for their patience in diplomatic settings. As the formal introductions concluded, I noticed one human who had not been introduced. He sat slightly apart from the others, observing the proceedings with intense focus. Tall for a human, with features that suggested advanced age, he wore no insignia or formal attire, but rather a simple white uniform with a symbol I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me during a brief recess. I approached the unidentified human, who watched my approach with those strangely knowing eyes. "I don't believe we've been formally introduced," I said. "I am Vexlaw, ambassador of the Signari." "Dr. Alexander Volkov," he replied, his voice carrying what our cultural briefings had identified as a Russian accent. "Director of Advanced Sciences for Apollo Base." "You're a scientist," I observed, "not a diplomat or government representative." "Correct." His response was curt, but not unfriendly. "If I may ask, what is your role in these proceedings?" Dr. Volkov studied me for a moment before responding. "I am here to evaluate." "Evaluate what exactly?" "Technological compatibility, cultural exchange potential, threat assessment." He delivered these points without inflection. I felt my frills ripple involuntarily at the last item. "Threat assessment, I assure you, the Signari come in peace." "And the Zandari?" Volkov asked, his gaze shifting to where Krolax stood examining a display of human historical achievements in space exploration. I hesitated, torn between diplomatic protocol and a growing sense that the humans deserved warning. "The Zandari have their own interests," I said carefully. "Fossil fuels," Volkov stated plainly, catching me off guard. That is, your species uses them for FTL travel, correct? Some form of refined hydrocarbon that catalyzes the space-time manipulation process. My four eyes blinked in rapid succession. "How could you possibly know that?" A small smile crossed Volkov's face. "Logical deduction. Your ship's emission signatures contain trace elements consistent with processed hydrocarbons, and Earth has abundant reserves that we've been systematically moving away from using." "Moving away?" I seized on this point. "Then you've developed alternative energy sources." "Of course," Volkov said, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "Fossil fuels are inefficient and environmentally destructive. We began serious investment in alternatives over a century ago." "What sort of alternatives?" I asked, genuinely curious now. "Various renewables initially, solar, wind, hydroelectric. But the real breakthrough came with practical fusion power in the 2080s, following the advances in nuclear fission technology that began in the mid-20th century." Nuclear fission. These were theoretical concepts in Signari science, never successfully implemented on a large scale. The energy density and engineering challenges had proven insurmountable. "You're saying humans have mastered nuclear fusion?" I tried to keep the disbelief from my voice. Volkov's eyes narrowed slightly. "You haven't." Before I could respond, Director Chen announced that the formal discussions would resume. As we returned to our seats, I noticed Kralax watching my interaction with Volkov, his crystalline features unreadable. The remainder of the diplomatic session consisted of carefully choreographed exchanges of cultural information, with both sides clearly withholding more than they revealed. The humans expressed interest in galactic society, asked pointed questions about governance structures, and seemed particularly curious about the relationship between the various alien species represented. What they didn't ask about was technology, which struck me as unusual for a species making first contact. Most newly discovered civilizations were eager to learn about advanced spaceflight, medical science, and weapons, yet the humans barely touched on these subjects. As the session concluded for what the humans called Day 1 of talks, Kralax approached me in the corridor, leading back to our accommodations. "What did the human scientist tell you?" he demanded without preamble. "Nothing of consequence," I replied, maintaining an outward calm despite my unease. He was curious about our cultural practices. Kralax's crystalline face shifted, facets realigning in what I recognized as skepticism. "The fleet will arrive within 3 of their days. I suggest you ensure your diplomatic team is aboard your vessel when they do. The Signari will not be complicit in an unprovoked attack on a newly contacted species," I stated firmly. "We will file formal protests with the Galactic Council. By the time your protests are heard, this world's resources will already be under Adzandari control," Kralax replied, dismissively. "Save your moral outrage, Ambassador. It changes nothing." He strode away, leaving me with a deepening sense of dread. I needed to warn the humans somehow without explicitly violating diplomatic protocol or revealing that I had prior knowledge of Zandari plans. That opportunity came sooner than expected. After returning to our quarters and ensuring they were secure from surveillance, a standard procedure in Signari diplomacy, I received a message requesting my presence for a private cultural exchange with a small human delegation. Nylax looked concerned. "It could be a trap." "The humans have no reason to trap us," I pointed out. "Besides, this might be my only chance to speak more freely." The meeting location was a small observatory dome with a spectacular view of Earth hanging in the blackness of space. Dr. Volkov was there, along with Secretary General Adeyemi, and 2 others I recognized from the diplomatic session. "Ambassador Vexlaw," Adeyemi greeted me. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." "The pleasure is mine," I responded, performing the appropriate gesture, though I confess some curiosity about the purpose of this more intimate gathering. Adeyemi's expression became serious. "Frankness, Ambassador." Away from certain ears, I understood immediately. "I see. We know why the Zandari are here," Volkov stated bluntly, "and we know about the fleet that's coming." My frills flattened against my skull in shock. "How could you possibly? We've been monitoring deep space for decades," one of the other humans explained. "Our quantum detection arrays picked up the Zandari fleet's departure from their home system 8 months ago." "Impossible," I breathed. "Human technology couldn't possibly." "Let's not waste time debating what humans can or cannot do," Adeyemi interrupted gently but firmly. "The question is, Ambassador Vexlaw, where do the Signari stand in this conflict?" "Conflict," I repeated, still struggling to process the implications. "There doesn't need to be a conflict. Perhaps I can convince the Zandari to." "The Zandari will not be convinced," Volkov cut in. "Based on our historical analysis of their interactions with other species, they will demand our fossil fuel reserves, threaten force, and then employ it when refused." "You've been studying the Zandari." This revelation was perhaps the most shocking of all. "For how long?" The humans exchanged glances before Adeyemi answered. "We've been aware of galactic civilization for over 200 years, Ambassador. We intercepted and decoded communications, observed from a distance, and prepared. 200 years. While we thought we were just discovering humans, they had been watching us, learning about us, preparing for this moment. The implications were staggering. Why reveal this to me now? I asked. Because we need to know if the Signari will stand with the Zandari when the attack comes, Adeyemi said plainly. Or if you will withdraw your forces and allow us to handle this matter directly with the Zandari. The Signari have no military forces here, I clarified. The Nebula Whisper is a diplomatic vessel with minimal defensive capabilities. Relief visibly washed over the human representatives. Then I strongly suggest you find a reason to withdraw to a safe distance within the next 72 hours, Volkov advised. You intend to fight. I couldn't keep the concern from my voice. The Zandari fleet includes dreadnoughts capable of planetary bombardment. Your world would be devastated. A small confident smile appeared on Volkov's face. We are prepared for the Zandari, Ambassador. More than prepared. As I returned to our quarters, my mind raced with the implications of what I'd learned. The humans were not the primitive, newly spacefaring species we had believed them to be. They had been aware of galactic civilization for centuries, silently observing, preparing for first contact on their own terms, and somehow they believed they could stand against the military might of the Zandari, the oldest, most technologically advanced species in known space. I needed to get my people to safety before whatever the humans were planning unfolded. The next 2 days of diplomatic talks proceeded with an air of unreality. The humans continued the charade of first contact discussions, while I struggled to maintain the pretense that I was unaware of their true level of knowledge or the impending Zandari attack. Krolax became increasingly impatient, making thinly veiled references to Earth's resources and the benefits of Zandari protection. The humans responded with polite interest but made no commitments. On the evening of the second day, I received notification that the Zandari fleet had entered the outer reaches of the solar system. They would reach Earth within 24 hours. I made my decision. Following protocol, I requested a private audience with Secretary General Adeyemi to discuss matters of cultural exchange. When we were alone, I abandoned pretense. The Zandari fleet will reach Earth tomorrow, I said without preamble. The Signari diplomatic mission will be departing lunar orbit within 12 hours, ostensibly to consult with our government regarding the progress of talks. Adeyemi nodded, unsurprised. We appreciate your discretion, Ambassador, and your warning, though it was unnecessary. Secretary General, I said leaning forward, I must impress upon you the seriousness of the threat. The Zandari dreadnought alone carries enough firepower to render your planet uninhabitable. We understand the threat, Ambassador Vexlor, she replied calmly. We've been preparing for this possibility for generations. With what? I couldn't help but ask. Even if your technology is more advanced than we realized, you can't possibly match the Zandari militarily. A serene smile crossed her face. You might be surprised, Ambassador. In any case, we appreciate your concern for humanity's well-being. It speaks well of the Signari. Will you at least tell me what you're planning? I asked, so that I might accurately report to the Galactic Council afterward. Adeyemi considered this for a moment. Let's just say that while humanity has chosen to move beyond fossil fuels for our energy needs, we haven't abandoned the study of energetic reactions. Quite the opposite. The cryptic answer did little to reassure me, but I sensed I would get nothing more concrete. 12 hours later, the Nebula Whisper broke lunar orbit, ostensibly returning to Signari space for consultations. In reality, we took up position at the edge of the solar system, where we could observe events without being caught in whatever confrontation was about to unfold. The Zandari fleet arrived with typical dramatic flair, hundreds of warships dropping out of FTL travel in perfect formation around Earth, with the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion positioned directly above the planet's northern hemisphere. From our observation point, we watched as a communication was broadcast from the dreadnought to Earth. Though we couldn't intercept the content, it wasn't difficult to guess. Surrender your resources, or be destroyed. What happened next was entirely unexpected. 2 human vessels, just 2, emerged from behind Earth's moon. Our sensors identified them as a carrier class and a bomber class, though both were larger than any human spacecraft we had previously observed. They're sending only 2 ships against the entire Xandari fleet. Nylax whispered in disbelief. It's suicide. I watched in grim fascination. Perhaps they hoped to surrender in person. But the human vessels made no approach toward the Xandari dreadnought. Instead, the smaller of the 2 ships launched what appeared to be a single missile toward the Eternal Dominion. A token resistance, one of my aides suggested. I wasn't so sure. Something about the humans' confidence over the past days suggested they knew exactly what they were doing. The missile approached the dreadnought, which made no move to intercept or evade. Why would it? Against such a primitive weapon. What happened next defied comprehension. A flash of light, brighter than Earth's sun, erupted from the point of impact. For a fraction of a second, nothing seemed to happen. Then, in a silent spectacle of destruction, the mighty Eternal Dominion simply disappeared, replaced by an expanding sphere of superheated plasma that engulfed nearby Xandari vessels like a hungry predator devouring its prey. By the first egg, Nylax breathed, her frills rigid with shock. What was that? I had no answer. Our sensors were overwhelmed by the energy release, which was unlike anything in our records. The sphere of destruction expanded outward, consuming Xandari ships by the dozens before finally dissipating. When our visual feed stabilized, the vista was transformed. Where once had been the pride of the Xandari fleet, now there was nothing but debris and radiation. Over 3/4 of the invasion force had been utterly destroyed in a single strike. The remaining Xandari ships, displaying a level of disorganization unprecedented in their military history, began emergency FTL jumps, fleeing the solar system in panic. Within minutes, the battle, if such a one-sided annihilation could be called that, was over. The human vessels returned to lunar orbit as casually as if they had completed a routine patrol. Ambassador, our communications officer called. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. The view screen activated to show Dr. Volkov's face, as calm and composed as ever. Ambassador Vexlaw, he greeted me. I trust you observed the recent events from a safe distance. Still in shock, I could only nod. Doctor, what weapon did you deploy? The energy readings were beyond anything in our records. A thermonuclear device, Volkov replied, matter-of-factly. A rather old design, actually. Something we call the Tsar Bomber, a hydrogen fusion bomb with a yield of approximately 100 megatons. One of our smaller weapons, but suitable for a demonstration. Smaller, I repeated incredulously. Doctor, that single weapon destroyed a Xandari dreadnought and dozens of warships. Volkov's expression remained unchanged. Yes, as I mentioned during our conversations, humanity developed nuclear technologies centuries ago. While we've largely transitioned to peaceful applications, like energy production, we maintained our defensive capabilities. The implications were staggering. A species that had mastered nuclear fusion, not just for energy production, but for weapons, and had done so centuries before achieving interstellar travel. It was a developmental path, unlike any other known species. The Galactic Council will want an explanation, I said, struggling to process the new reality. The destruction of a Xandari dreadnought is unprecedented. We are prepared to dispatch diplomatic representatives to your Galactic Council, Volkov replied. We believe it's time for humanity to take its place in the wider community of spacefaring civilizations, on equal terms. Equal terms. After what I had just witnessed, there was no doubt in my mind that humanity would be entering galactic society, not as a junior member, but as a major power to be reckoned with. There is one more matter, Ambassador, Volkov continued. We're particularly interested in obtaining the specifications for your faster-than-light drive technology. In exchange, we're prepared to share our advances in nuclear energy applications. I couldn't help but laugh. a stress response common to many species. Doctor, after what I've just witnessed, I suspect you'll have no shortage of species willing to trade technology with you. Volkov's expression softened slightly. We would prefer to establish our first technology exchange with the Signari. Your reputation for ethical diplomacy precedes you. I will convey your offer to my government, I promised, though I suspect they will be quick to accept. After the transmission ended, I stood in silence on the bridge of the Nebula Whisper, contemplating the new galactic order that had just been born. The Exandari hegemony, which had dominated interstellar politics for millennia, had just been humbled by a species they had intended to subjugate. The balance of power would never be the same. Your orders, Ambassador, Nilax asked, breaking me from my reverie. I turned to face my crew, all of whom were still processing the shocking events we had witnessed. Set course back to Earth, I instructed. It seems we have much to learn from our new allies. As the Nebula Whisper turned back toward the blue-green planet, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony. We had come to Earth believing we were introducing a primitive species to the greater galactic community. Instead, we had inadvertently unleashed a technological powerhouse that would forever change the course of interstellar relations. The humans, with their unique developmental path, focused on harnessing the power of the atom rather than fossil fuels, had achieved what no other species had managed in thousands of years of space exploration. They had broken the Xandari stranglehold on galactic politics with a single decisive blow. And as our ship accelerated toward Earth, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of humanity's impact on the stars. 5 galactic years later, human year 2251, the observation deck of the Galactic Council's headquarters on Centralia offered a spectacular view of the multi-species metropolis below. As I stood watching the sunset reflect off the crystalline towers, I couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed in such a short time. Ambassador Vexlaw, a voice called from behind me, still admiring the view after all these years. I turned to see Dr. Alexander Volkov approaching, now wearing the formal attire of Earth's permanent representative to the Galactic Council. Despite the passage of time, he looked remarkably unchanged. A benefit of the life extension technologies humans had apparently developed alongside their other scientific advances. Some views never grow tiresome, I replied, gesturing toward the cityscape, particularly when they continue to evolve in such fascinating ways. Indeed, the skyline of Centralia had changed dramatically since humanity's admission to the Council. Human architectural influences were visible throughout the newer districts, and countless human businesses, research facilities, and cultural centers had sprung up across the planet. The council session went well today, Volkov commented, coming to stand beside me at the viewport. The trade agreement with the Arcturus Confederacy passed unanimously. With human support, that was never in doubt, I noted. Your people have become quite the power brokers in council politics. Volkov smiled slightly. We've simply found our place in the galactic community, a diplomatic understatement if ever I'd heard one. In the 5 cycles since the Exandari incident, as it was now called in official records, humanity had risen from unknown newcomer to one of the dominant forces in interstellar politics. The technological exchange that had begun with the Signari, FTL technology from us, nuclear science from them, had quickly expanded to include dozens of species eager to benefit from humanity's unique scientific developments. Earth-designed fusion reactors now powered starbases throughout Council space, while human defensive systems were considered the gold standard for planetary protection. The Xandari, meanwhile, had withdrawn from much of galactic society, their once mighty empire now reduced to their home systems and a handful of loyal colonies. The destruction of the Eternal Dominion and much of their fleet had shattered both their military strength and their mystique of invincibility.
I received word that the terraforming project on Mars has been completed ahead of schedule. I mentioned changing the subject. Quite an achievement. Yes, Volkov nodded. The adaptation of Centaurian atmospheric processing technology to work with our nuclear power systems proved more efficient than either species had anticipated.
We'll begin civilian settlement next year. Another example of humanity's remarkable ability to take existing galactic technologies and improve upon them through novel applications of their nuclear science. And what of the Joint Research Initiative? I asked, referring to the massive scientific collaboration between humans and 7 other species, including my own, focused on developing the next generation of interstellar propulsion. Promising results, Volkov replied. The fusion-catalyzed quantum drive performed at 327% efficiency compared to standard FTL systems in the latest tests. If the trend continues, we might see interstellar travel times reduced by nearly an order of magnitude within the decade. I shook my head in amazement. Your species continues to astound, Alexander. In 5 cycles, you've advanced technologies that other civilizations have worked on for millennia. We had a different starting point, Volkov said modestly. Our focus on nuclear physics rather than hydrocarbon chemistry simply led us down a different technological path. A fortuitous path.